Welcome back to the Swider Show, episode number 43. And we have a guest. No, wait. Paddy Casey's back. Paddy Casey's back this week, out in Bethany Beach, and he's looking like a true podcaster right now in his background.
Yeah,
So
much anticipated return. If you're on YouTube, you can see me sitting on the couch, just chilling. This is the point we're at. We're 43 episodes in. I just feel so comfortable doing this. I felt like the background should have reflected that. So, but no, the real reason is my family's here. I don't have any desk set up, so just making this work. This is where I work from home all day, just grinding. Yeah, now I'm continuing to work from home. With
you're making it
my
work,
finished
bro.
up my side gig for the day. Now the real deal starts. So. But
You're making it work.
no, first of all, I appreciate you guys holding it down last week. I'll be truthful, I didn't get to listen to the entire episode. But the reason I shut it off midway is because I do think Adam's better than me at asking questions and being a co-host. So I was getting a little pissed off.
Hey, no, shout out Adam for a big week. He stepped up. He stepped out of the bullpen and pitched a great game. So, Coach,
Yeah.
shout out to Adam.
I'm gonna be the first one to ever say this in sports. I think he Wally pipped me. That's what people are saying.
It's a good reference. That's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
I think I threw a good 5 innings. I wouldn't say it was a complete game, but I did a good enough job last week, I think.
Listen, the mailbag questions, they kind of tee up, but I have been there. I've been in that scenario before. I've been in that seat. It does get a little overwhelming. You're like, Swider's answering, so you try to respond and like be present with what he's saying, but then you're like, I don't know when the best time to transition to the next question is. I don't know what the best next question is. So yeah, it's a tough job. It's one of the tougher jobs in the world, being the co-host on a mailbag episode. So good work, Lewis.
No,
One thing I will say about
easy.
Adam. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say Paddy makes it look easy last week, or the week. Like last week, it was tough, but Paddy's been doing it for 40 other episodes. So you have a little more experience than me for now, but we'll see. We'll see if I can take over in the next couple months here.
One thing I will say about Adam, he is genuinely interested in every single answer, and then he's just thinking of just questions after questions that come after. So shout out to Adam, man.
Yeah, phenomenal job. But Swider, how goes it, man? I haven't talked to you in 2 weeks on the pod. I know we've been texting and stuff, but how's Miami?
No, it's been going well, man. Can't complain. It's been a great experience. Like I told Adam last week, the Miami Heat culture is like a real deal thing. You know what I mean? Like just from you talk about guys coming in here, working hard, working out 4 times a day. Like it's real. Like from the top down, like you have a guy like Bam Adebayo working out 4 times a day. You have Jimmy coming in here working out. You have Duncan working out 3-4 times a day. Like when you have the top of your team working out to the last guy, it just creates like an unbelievable culture that culminates throughout the whole entire thing. And then Pat Riley's in the gym almost every single day. The GM is in the gym every single day. The assistant GM's in the gym every single day. Watching the E10 guys who they might never bring up on the team, but they're really giving a look to. So it's been a great experience so far. Really excited for the opportunities that are coming forward, and I think they're going to give me a real shot to prove what I can do.
Mm-hmm. Wait, can we stay on that? How do you do 4 workouts in a day? Like, what are you doing for the 3rd and 4th workout?
So I asked Bam, I was like, 4 workouts a day, like what does that entail? So he's like, I wake up in the morning, 6 a.m. I do a basketball workout, 7:30 I lift, I come back at 10, do a workout. Do another basketball workout, and then I come back at 7 p.m. and then shoot. I'm like, wow, that's impressive, bro. That's impressive.
That is crazy.
He's like, you talk about a guy like Kobe Bryant being able to do 5 workouts a day. Your body just kind of like adapts to it. And in my mind, I'm like, bro, this guy is crazy. But I mean, if you think about it, when you do start at 6 a.m., you give yourself more of a window to kind of work out. But it's still really impressive, man.
It sounds like he's packing it all in before lunchtime now. Your 3rd workout's at 10 a.m. It's like you got the rest of the day and then you go back and shoot.
And it's impressive, though. It's impressive. Like, he's a worker. I'll give him credit. And also, he's just a great guy. I said this story on the podcast last week. I don't know if you heard this, but I brought one of the managers that we had at Syracuse, Zach Pascal, into the gym. And he's a big Miami Heat fan. Yeah, and Fitzy. But specifically Zach, because one night that I brought Zach and Bam was shooting out there as well. he was asking Zach about the Syracuse zone, like made him feel super special. So just having like a guy like that at the top of your roster, top of your organization, who takes the time out of his day to actually ask questions to like a little Miami Heat fan, a Syracuse manager, you know what I mean? Like it just shows the
Yeah,
kind of people in the organization that you're dealing with in Miami.
he should have went to Cuse. He would have been maybe the best anchor of the zone of all time.
He said, I always wanted to go to Syracuse play a 2-3 zone. I was like, man, Kentucky's probably a tough place to turn down, but the Cuse would have welcomed you with open arms.
Yeah, seriously. Wait, why didn't he go? Do we not hit him up?
I
He
don't
had
know.
to have been recruited.
One thing I've talked about to primarily bigs about Syracuse that we haven't had a lot of one and done bigs. So like Tristan Thompson said the same exact thing. He's like, man, I like Syracuse, but they never had like a one and done big. Like the best big that we kind of had NBA wise, obviously Fat Mello, but Raheem Christmas was kind of the guy that everyone like looked to. Like he was a second round pick, but besides that, we haven't had a lot of like. Hopefully
I
Jesse
guess that's a good
in the
point.
future, but we haven't had a lot of like bigs who've gotten drafted besides obviously Derek Coleman back in the day, who was the number one pick.
Yeah. But to your point, Jesse's even another example. I feel like it's mainly because of the zone. Like when you're playing center, it's so hard. It's so intricate coming out of high school that it definitely takes a year or two to actually like understand the whole concept of it.
Yeah, for sure. And then it's one of those things where I think Boeheim is he's never really had besides like there's been a couple of guys who've kind of broken the code, but he's one of those old school coaches who doesn't really play a freshman. You know what I mean? Tyrannus, he was one of those one and done guys. But even like a guy like Deion Waiters, is number 4 pick in the draft, he still spent 2 years at Syracuse. Mike Carter Williams, first round pick, 2 years at Syracuse, right? Like O'Shea Brissett, like he ended up spending 2 years at Syracuse. Like all these guys, it's not really like a one and done school. Not I bet not for any reason. I bet Coach Boeheim wanted those one and done guys towards the end, but
Right.
it just never panned out in the cards for those
Yeah,
one
it's
and
just a
done
different
guys
culture.
coming to Cuse. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like you got to earn your playing time more so than other places. Because like if you get a 5-star at I don't know, name a random school, and Edwards at Georgia, you can't like
Yeah.
have him earn his spot. You know what I mean? Because then it's like your seat might get hot. But Boeheim's like, listen, man, I'm more proven than any one of my teams, so like he's gonna have to prove to me that he belongs on the court.
Exactly.
But yeah, any other workout stories? Not to get into specifics, but is the actual workout much different than LA?
No, it is a lot different. It is a lot different. I think I keep on saying like there's not a lot of NBA teams that work on defense in the summer, right? It's a lot of offensive skill development, and even at Syracuse and Villanova, like I feel like the summers are mostly offensive skill development, and then once you get to the fall, that's when you go those 2-3 hour practices really get into your defensive concepts. But in the NBA, like you don't really have time. You have a week and a half training camp to kind of get into everything that you do, and for young guys like me and some of the other guys, I mean, you don't really have a lot of time to learn those concepts. So they've been doing a great job of breaking down the offense and defensive concepts and philosophies that go behind some of the language. So that's a lot different. We get to play live twice a week, play 3-on-3 on Tuesday, 5-on-5 on Thursday, which is pretty normal, pretty regular, which is nice. But yeah, I would say in LA it was a lot more individualized. With the Heat, it's a lot more team based. So we all the E10s work out together. The two ways and the young guys work out together. You're going live like a lot throughout those workouts. Like if that's 1-on-1, if that's 2-on-2, if that's breaking down a defensive drill, and you go live in those certain moments. If that's zigzag drills, like if Pat Riley's in the building, we're doing defense. You know what I mean?
You're doing like
that's
old school, like slide to the elbow, turn around, slide to half court. No way.
Yeah.
There's like I'm sure there's some younger Swider Show fans listening. There's like 8-year-olds that are going to do that at their local ball camp this weekend.
Yep.
Like at the Buddy Boeheim, Jimmy Boeheim camp, they were probably doing that last week.
No, Buddy and Jimmy aren't doing any defense.
Oh, that's a good point. That's a good point. That's a great
They're not
point.
doing any just shooting drills and have fun.
Right, yeah. But my point is, I mean, that's like people view that as an elementary thing, but the guys that just laced them up in the NBA Finals are still doing that in August.
Yeah, no, I mean, honestly, for me, I kept on telling my agent Nico, like it's been great for me to kind of like just keep on learning and keep on working on those things because it's kind of on you if the team doesn't do it to work on those things. So it's been great to kind of have the team and myself like things that I need to work on, things that they want to work on, they kind of align. So it's been good.
Yeah. What about the you mentioned the language before? Is that the same throughout like each team, or is there like individualized stuff for each?
Yeah, I would say most of the language is pretty universal, but there
Uh-huh.
are some differences, right? So, like, for example, like when the universal call in the NBA for switch is red. So, with the Heat, they
Is
just
there
say
a reason
switch.
for that, or they just say that? Oh, the Heat
I
say
don't
switch.
know.
Okay.
The Heat just say switch. With a lot of these NBA teams, they say red. But red at Villanova was when you're front of the post. You're yelling red so the person on the backside can come and try and get a
Hmm.
deflection, right? So every single team has a little bit different language. I would say most of the teams, like in terms of actions, right? Like pistol is a step up on the strong side, um, while everyone's kind of like out, like all the other three players are spaced out on the wing, slot, and corner, right? So
Hmm.
that's a certain action. Like there's certain actions that everyone kind of knows, but when it comes to language, like I would say that there is some different languages, right? Like drop coverage is different on every team. What they call it, the Lakers we call it
Yeah.
center. Some teams just yell drop. Like the Heat have a certain coverage where they just call it different things. Like they call it like a zone type of thing, right? And then like there's certain hedge calls that are different, right? Some teams call it a show, some teams call it a hedge, some teams call it
A
a
blitz,
get out and
if you
get
will.
back. Yeah, a blitz is more of a universal call too. A blitz is when you kind of
Yeah.
trap the guy. So um, so yeah, no, it's all pretty similar. And at the end of the day,
Yeah.
if you say one of the things that, like, if you say like a call that another team said, like usually everyone knows and like, oh
He'll
no,
pick up on it.
we call that something else. Yeah,
Oh, okay. I guess that question also you'll probably be able to answer better in like a month when you start doing more like 5-on-5 stuff in training camp.
yeah,
But
definitely.
you mentioned Nova slash Q Summers. I've actually been meaning to ask you this on the pod. Do you have a good story from like summer pickup at Nova or Q's? Off the top of the head, this is like putting you on the spot, but I don't know if we've ever discussed this before. I know we have with guests. I remember Colin bringing something up,
Yeah.
but I don't know. Those are some of like the best like tidbits because it's behind the scenes.
So every single summer we have this thing called Summer Jam at Villanova, right? And summer jam is usually like when like the alumni come back and you they play golf in the morning, and then all the guys who are in the NBA are playing pro overseas. They play against the team like in the afternoon around like 3 4 p.m. So that's like a big day for us because the first time we're kind of playing together as a team, and then you get to play against all these NBA guys who played at Nova who all know what it is. And it's so funny because the contrasting styles, like all these guys are just like hooping, chilling, you know what I mean? And then we're like
Hmm.
diving on loose balls. We're freaking like calling out plays. Like Coach Wright and all the coaches are like really like looking at it like this is like a big deal. So it's funny because then it turns into something serious because the older guys, the NBA guys, don't want to lose to a bunch of college kids.
Right.
So my first summer jam, I forget. I don't. Colin was out. I think JQ wasn't there. And I don't know if Phil. I don't think Phil was playing either. So it was like Eric Pascal, me, Dada, Jermaine, uh, Joe Cremo, like a bunch of these guys, right?
So
And
this is going into your freshman year?
this is going into my freshman year.
Okay.
And I remember um, I played really well. I was hitting a bunch of shots. I was like dunking like all over the place. I was feeling really
Really?
athletic. Yeah, I
Or
was
the
throwing
hoops
it
at
down.
9 foot?
I mean, it felt like it that day, right? And I remember it came down to the end of like the last game. I think we were playing like best of five. It was 2-2. I was out on the court, and Josh Hart had an ISO on me at the top of the key. So he was kind of holding it at this time. Like Josh just came off a good rookie year with the Lakers. He might have just got traded, or
He's
it
been
might have been
traded a
his
bunch of times.
second year out. It might have been his second year
Yeah.
out. He might have just got traded to the Pelicans.
Pelicans.
So at this time, I mean, what's been the story for me? I can't guard an ISO, blah blah blah. So I remember he got into the basket. I stayed in front of him, locked him up. He took a step back. He missed. We came down. We scored. We won. And we won 3-2, and that was obviously like a great time. But like
Uh-huh.
it's so cool. Like every single year you play against those guys.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's probably one of the best stories in terms of
That's a great
pickup.
story. I was not expecting a defense story, I'll be honest with you.
Yeah, defense
There
story.
it goes. Josh Hart.
But I
No, go
will
ahead.
say the most impressive summer I've ever seen from a player like was that summer that Colin had for his sophomore going into junior year summer. Yeah, that was unbelievable. Like we had a day where Jalen Brunson, I think like and Javon Pinkston and like maybe Darren Hilliard came back and they played with us. So it was them three and then like two of our guys versus like Colin, Eric Dixon, who at the time was like a freshman who was going to redshirt. I think Slater was on that team. Sadiq may have been on that team. And Colin literally, I don't think he missed a shot the whole entire day. He was going at Jalen the whole entire day. He ended the whole entire run with it. Like he dunked over like two people. Like,
He
and
dunked.
then yeah, no, it was
Wow.
ridiculous. And then he ended up winning the day like 4-1 over Jalen Brunson's team. Like that's the level that he was playing on that day. And if you know Jalen's like the most competitive guy ever. So he wasn't talking to anyone after. And he was all pissed off. If he passed you the ball and you missed a shot, it was like the end of the world. So um no, those are always fun in the summer at Villanova because they treat them like games. At Syracuse, you're kind of working on your stuff. Like sometimes, like you have to have like some other guys come in and play. But it's always fun. Like I remember Elijah came back and played one time; those were fun. Um, and then I never got to play in this, but I know they always have great stories from when Boeheim's Army gets to play against the Syracuse team every single year. So
because TBT wasn't a thing the year we were going there, right?
it was, but there was all these like COVID restrictions, so we couldn't be in the gym at the same time as them, and that's the year they actually won the TBT.
Oh right, 21. Yeah, but those are the little tidbits you always get. Then like real hoopers now. Playing pickup is like way different than actually just playing basketball.
Oh, so different.
Like you're way more free. The shot selection is way worse, but it's more fun. And the level of play in those type of runs is like so high that like you're saying, Gillespie, like no one's saying he's better than Jalen Brunson. Jalen Brunson's averages 25 a game for the Knicks, but like on any given day when you're that talented, it's like you might get killed.
And like Colin got hot, right? Like you can have a day in open gym where you can get hot and you just keep going. You're not getting subbed out. You just keep on like no coach is gonna be like, or no other guy on the team if you're hot is gonna be like, yo, that was a bad shot. No,
Exactly.
just keep going. Like you don't have a Hall of Famer on the sideline that you need to think about while you're playing.
Yeah, I still say like playing pickup with you guys is when you really see the difference between like, all right, this is why these kids play high major and I played Division two. Like,
but there's
I
good
remember
players in Division two. There's good players
Oh
in Division
yeah,
two
yeah.
and
There's some
Division
great
three.
players in Division two and Division three. Below 3% play from high school to college, but I remember guarding Joe like real early on when I got there, and I was like, I have no like you can do whatever you want right now. He was shooting from like half court. It was one of those days that Joe just like couldn't miss.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he was like way quicker than I thought he was going to be. Handle was so tight, and I was just like, I don't know what to do here.
Yeah, and it's funny. The fans are like, "Oh, you shouldn't be playing here." He only scored 1,700 points at Syracuse.
Exactly.
But whatever.
Yeah, it was like absolutely jaw dropping. But all you guys had your days. You, Buddy, Joe, Jimmy, myself.
Jimbo.
Yeah. But that's actually a good transition, Josh Hart, because I wanted to see if you've been watching the USA games. I haven't watched like each second of every game, but
Yeah.
I guess his first story is Anthony Edwards. The other day, that game was fucking insane. He just kind of like took it over and went like I don't know. It was shades of remember when I think it was 2010. I want to say it was 2010 when KD was on like I think this was the World Cup team. It was like him, young Steph, Iguodala was on that team. It was kind of like this roster where it wasn't like the heavy hitters, not the guys you're sending to the Olympics, but it was like this young guy who they crowned like, all right, this is going to boost you into being one of the best players in the league. The other day, he was just like by far the best player on the court. It's pretty fun to watch.
No, he's been really impressive, and he's like at that point where it's like this is the time where he makes that big step, that big leap. And I think that having this summer to kind of be able to play against high level competition, guys that you won't see in the NBA, but it's just a different style of basketball. Like the thought process that goes into the game. It's only 40 minutes. the style, like stylistically, like you might not be playing against the talent level, but it's probably harder to score in FIBA play than it is in NBA play. So I think this is just it's a great experience for all those guys. And shout out to Austin Reeves, man. That guy can fit in any organized basketball game like ever. He's killing it, man.
The
Shout out Austin.
trajectory of his career, he's going to be a top 5 player in the league pretty soon. I
I
mean,
mean,
going into last year, it was like he's a solid role player. Like, this is exceeding expectations so much. He was on a 2-way 12 months ago, and then
yeah.
by the All-Star break, it's like, he probably has to play like 30 minutes a night. And then by the playoffs, it's like we should run our offense through him a lot of possessions. And now it's like he's the second best player on Team USA to this point.
And the thing that makes Austin so special is that one night he could be the guy you go to. The next night he can be a spot up shooter in the corner. The night after that, he can guard like the first or second best player on the team. He's just so versatile and can do so many things on the court that he almost like can't have a bad game, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like he might have a bad game shooting, but he still affects the game by passing and rebounding and defending well. And then the games where he doesn't maybe defend and rebound as well, he's probably scoring 22 points. So it's like it's almost like he can't have a bad game.
Right. How high on your list of guys that you would like to play with is Halliburton?
He's got to be top 5. You look at that team, I think him and Austin are 2 of the 5 guys I want to play with most in the NBA.
Mm-hmm.
Like from an IQ perspective, like Buddy Hield is an unbelievable player. He's obviously been a great shooter everywhere that he's been. But I bet if you ask him how much easier it is being a shooter with Tyrese Halliburton, he would probably say 10 times. You know what I mean? Like, like he doesn't even sweat, and he has 5 attempts off in the first quarter.
Yeah, Halliburton plays in like slow motion. I don't really understand. Like he looks like he's one of those guys like the cliche that it looks like he knows what is going to happen before it actually does. Like people say that about Larry Bird. It's like he sees the game before the game happens.
Yeah,
that's like actually how Halliburton operates. He also, it's very impressive to me how good he is off the ball. Because a guy like that, you'd be like, oh, he needs the ball all the time in order to succeed. But you kind of throw him in any lineup too, and he's going to be super effective.
So quick little story here. So there was a big debate in 2018 when Tyler Hero didn't win the Wisconsin Gatorade Player of the Year. He was clearly the best player in the state. Obviously, turned out to be a great player at Kentucky, one and done. But he was the best player in the state that year. So there was a kid who didn't have that many offers going into his senior year. Had a good senior year, but kind of blew up late and ended up going to Iowa State. That player ended up being Tyrese Halliburton, who won the Gatorade Player of the Year over Tyler at that point. Tyler ends up being one and done, goes to the NBA. Halliburton ends up having like a good freshman year, like really good sophomore year, goes to the NBA. If someone were to say like at that time to Tyler, hey, like Tyrese Halliburton wins, but he's going to end up being like a $250 million player in the NBA.
Yeah, 260.
Those people in Wisconsin are like, oh, we were right. Like, how crazy is that you have
validated?
Not even validated, but like no one looks at you crazy now when you look at the trajectory. When Tyler Hero was like a top like 50 NBA player now, he's $130 million player. Like it's ridiculous to think about that when Halliburton at that time like wasn't a high level recruit, wasn't a 5-star player, wasn't like Tyler was in Jordan Brand, he was in Team USA, he was in all the camps, everything. I think it's just crazy to look back because the reason why they did it is because Tyler decommitted from Wisconsin. Like, so they were pissed at him for that, so they didn't give him Gatorade Player of the Year.
I remember that. Yeah, they wanted his head. How long was he committed to Wisconsin?
So he committed maybe sophomore year to Wisconsin. Then decommitted like right after his AAU season was junior year. But he committed early to Wisconsin.
Yeah, I can't see like Wisconsin having him on their team.
He just almost had like too much swag for Wisconsin.
That's what I mean. Yeah. Like the way he wears his uniform and plays and walks into games and everything, he would not fit into Wisconsin. But yeah, how about the kid talent out of Wisconsin? Halliburton and Hero in the same class is nuts.
Well, even like a guy like Alondis Williams, who was the ACC player of the year.
Is he from Wisconsin?
He's from Milwaukee.
Oh, wow.
Like they've had a lot of talent in these past couple. Jalen Johnson's from Milwaukee. Patrick Baldwin's from Milwaukee. Like they've had a good amount of talent these past couple of years.
Yeah, shout out Wisconsin. Going back to Team USA though, it kind of sucks that these games are on at like 4 a.m., aren't they?
Yeah, some games have been at weird times.
Or-
I've watched like all the reruns though. Like they're always like
yeah,
on because August is definitely the worst time of the year for TV.
right. Not the worst time of the year for pods though.
Oh no, we're making it work in August, man. We're working in August.
NBA TV, they used to do way more like hardwood classics at this time of the year slash like or documentaries and stuff. I feel like they don't do that as much anymore.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's going on, but they
There's also way more material now. Like just run like the 2012 finals or something.
well
You know
also
what I
like
mean?
when it comes to like this these podcast spaces, like for example, like Steph Curry goes on to Gilbert Arenas podcast and said he's the greatest point guard of all time. Now all these talk shows and all these NBA shows, like that's all they talk about for like 2 or 3 straight weeks. Where before, like that wasn't happening.
Right.
So now it's like there's constantly content to talk about. There's constantly new things to talk about, even in the offseason for NBA players. Like James Harden going on and saying to
Yeah.
like I will not play for Daryl Morey. Now that provides 2 or 3 weeks of content where 20 years ago that you
Yeah.
couldn't do that because there would be no video. I mean, there might be a video, but it wouldn't be that easily accessed.
Yeah, I guess that's also true. I just don't fire up NBA TV as much anymore. I'm like that with like ESPN too. Like there's really no reason to watch SportsCenter. You
In
just go on
August,
Instagram.
there's no reason to watch SportsCenter in August.
Yeah. I mean, they're just shoving NFL down your throat.
I'm a big Scott Van Pelt at night guy after a game.
Well, you'll be happy to know then Scott Van Pelt has a place in Bethany Beach, Delaware. My family's seen him like multiple times.
No, he's a great dude too. I actually met him when I was like maybe like 10 or 11 years old, and
Really?
he was a great dude.
See, sometimes I say stuff like that to you or like Buddy or Jimmy, and like I think I'm cool for saying it, and then I remember like you guys are in the NBA slash you played at Syracuse, so it's not as cool. Like if I said that to one of my boys in Scranton, it's like, oh no way, you saw Scott Van Pelt, and you're like, I mean, I was at the gym with Pat Riley this morning, so we'll move on. Not as interesting. But you did get ahead of our next couple topics because we did want to do some NBA talk. This is our favorite content to do. Um, I don't know what you want to start with. Do you want to start with the Magic versus Steph thing, or do you want to start with the Harden thing? Up to you.
No, let's go ahead. Stephen Magic.
Steph and Magic, what's your take?
It's so tough for me because I never got to see like Magic and Michael Jordan and Larry Bird play live, right? Um, when it goes from like a pure point guard perspective, I feel like it's about like what you value as a point guard, right? If
Mm-hmm.
what you value as a point guard is a guy who's getting everybody involved, the IQ for the game, um, his ability to make other players around him better, like, and I think that can be broken up into different categories, right? Like Steph can make his teammates better by just providing space on the court, right?
Mm-hmm.
He can make his teammates better by making a guy like Draymond very very effective in the game and getting him paid multiple contracts.
Right.
But Magic Johnson could do it in a totally different way where he is assisting all these guys, right? He's making a Byron Scott, like all those guys on the team. I'm drawing a blank on just like that whole entire like Lakers team,
Yeah.
but
Worthy, Michael Cooper,
yeah,
Kurt
Worthy, Michael
Rambis, of
Cooper,
course.
yeah, of course, Kurt Rambis. Shout out Kurt Rambis. Obviously, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was the best player in the NBA at that time for what 10, 15 years. And that's something that like it's hard to quantify, right? Because the point guard position is totally different than it back then than it is now. So, for from my taste, I'm a Steph Curry guy just because of I think his elusiveness on the court. He revolutionized the game. Like he made the game totally different today than what it was back in the day. And I think probably has the tightest handle of all time. He's the greatest shooter of all time, and I think he's an underrated passer as well. Is he the passer that
Yeah.
Magic Johnson is or was? No, he's not. But you can't take away his scoring ability, his shooting ability, and his ability to make players better just from a pure spacing perspective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's a tough argument because like a lot of times you could be like, well, it depends on what your team needs if you're inserting them into an actual lineup. But both those guys, like you're saying, like you kind of insert them in any lineup. But I think I think I would disagree with you just to make it more interesting. I think right now, if you're going from like an all-time perspective, who are you going to rank
Yeah,
higher? I feel
yeah.
like you still got to go with Magic. I
Hmm.
could see Steph passing him within the next like 4 years because I think he probably does still have a couple more years of his prime. But um, I don't know. I mean, Magic was just like basically like a guaranteed finals, wasn't he? For like all of the '80s. Not that Steph isn't.
I mean, Steph only went to five straight finals and won four championships in 8 years.
Yeah, I guess I don't know. That's a tough argument.
No, it
I'm
is,
just trying to
and
dis. I thought you were going to say Magic, so I had all my Steph points ready. But then to make it more interesting, now I'm saying Magic.
no, and I think the Magic debate is a good one because I think it provides because when you look at Magic, right, he had to play against Bird. He went to the finals every single year.
Hmm.
He made so many of his guys around him better. I think he has more assists. He has more rebounds. He pretty much invented the triple double. And I think like Michael Jordan. I don't know if you saw this on ESPN this morning, but Michael Jordan texted Stephen A. Smith,
Do you think that was
and
true? Do you think he actually texted him?
I mean, it sounded like a Michael Jordan like text.
Yeah,
And I think the
I'm just saying
funniest,
all the replies on Twitter were just saying like cap, like
really,
this is the face you make when someone's lying, all that stuff.
I
I
don't
don't
know.
know.
I
I
think
was looking
Stephen
at it, I
A.
was like, I feel like this might be a lie, but it was a long text to make up.
Yeah, exactly. I think Stephen A. is a guy who's like actually closer to these people than like we actually like think.
Yeah.
But I think the funniest thing about it was that like Magic Johnson has five championships, Steph Curry has four. So
Yeah.
like
He was like,
that's how you know he knows he thinks he's the greatest player of all time because of the championship debate. So
oh, that's a good spin on it. I didn't even think of that.
you didn't think about that. Oh,
No, I didn't think of that
I'm a
that
LeBron guy,
hit
so
with LeBron. Yeah.
I'm always thinking about that stuff.
He was 100% thinking that way. That's hilarious. Um, yeah, I don't know. It's a tough question. Hence the August debate. But I'm gonna say Magic. I also just Magic's highlights are just like so entertaining to watch. Not that Steph's aren't, but uh, he played what 17 years or whatever it is, 15 years at a very high level. I don't know what the
Yeah.
exact stats are. I don't have it up. I'm trying to look it up on Basketball Reference right now. Not one time did he dribble with his left hand either, which makes it more impressive.
Watching
Um,
those old games are crazy. I got into a
it's
so
so different.
I went to see my trainer from Houston this weekend, Tim Glover, and we obviously had a great weekend with him. We got to work out with him. Went to Top Golf. Great weekend overall. But we got into like a shouting match. Me, him, and another one of his friends and people that we both know. We got into like a shouting match about comparing the game from back in like the '80s to
Really?
now. Oh, it was
Wait,
classic.
what would the points be, man? I could play the role of old head here if you want me to.
I was just saying, like guys back in the day can't play today. Like the skill level, the speed, the athleticism, like and for me, looking with Tim, it's like Tim's a trainer. Like Tim preaches skill development, right?
Right.
Like the skill level of these players is ridiculous nowadays, right? And they're like, oh, like soft, like the new generation is soft. Like, yeah, like the rule changes,
Classic.
like you know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like, I don't know. It's just like they were just comparing like it's just funny to talk to. I was like, all right, put on some games. I want to see this with my own eyes. So we started putting on like 1987 finals games, right?
Uh-huh.
Just to compare and contrast. And like
That's
guys are
hysterical.
starting the offense at the free throw line. Like guys are walking the ball up the court, and I don't know. It's just like there's guys like I didn't realize how good Hakeem Olajuwon, like how good he was.
Oh,
Like he was obviously like I knew he's one of the greatest players of all time, but when it comes to his footwork and like he actually could shoot the basketball. I didn't know he could shoot mid range jump shots.
hmm.
So like I could see him being able to shoot threes. Like he's probably a Joel Embiid like today. But I'm thinking about it like if the Warriors played against the '87 Lakers, like it's a blowout in my
Yeah.
mind.
It's just like an
So
evolution in philosophy. I mean,
yeah,
coaching back then was so much different, and just because there was less basketball to base off of, it was just way worse. Like, there's no point in shooting like if you watch an old game, like the Celtics, like you're saying, the amount of Danny Ainge spot up 16-footers that you're seeing, it's like just move
Oh, it's
behind the
ridiculous.
3-point line, dude. It's so like ugly. The other thing is that's one of the bigger myths ever is like defensive back then were so much tougher. They're just so much easier to guard offenses back then. You didn't
Oh,
have to worry about going 17 feet or out. Like everything was so packed in, so it was like way easier to guard people.
Paddy, watch a 1987 game and watch the amount of times I run the flex offense. It's hilarious.
It's so funny. But that was like revolutionary stuff, which I don't understand why like basketball players are just the most like I went to the Penn camp last week. I brought my
Yeah,
brother Kellen to the Penn camp.
nice.
There's freshmen in high school like doing moves that weren't invented when we were freshmen in high school. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like side steps, all that bullshit. Like they're all just working on it every single day because the game has just evolved to this point because there's 60 years of basketball rather than 25.
It's so funny. So when I was growing up, I worked out with Mr. Heron, Chris Heron, all the time, right? Like so that was like my trainer or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And he gave me two moves just to work on. The in and out, three moves. In and out cross, and then a hezzy. Like no one could stop that because no one like knew what was
Yeah.
going on. Like
I was actually gonna say his highlights are kind of like modern.
oh, he was unbelievable. He would play in the NBA today. He'd be a
Yeah,
Peyton Pritchard today. Like
right.
he was
He
that
was super
athletic, that
athletic too.
shifty. Oh, he was a killer too. He wanted to rip your throat out.
In like transition, it's
Oh,
crazy. Yeah, the Fresno State highlights are crazy.
speaking of how the NBA is different today, Patty, what's your? I don't know how to approach this, but like being a Philly fan, right? Like with the whole James Harden
Yeah.
situation, like, but you're also like a very modern thinker as well, like with the player empowerment stuff, right? Like how
Oh
do
yeah,
you
I like that
how,
description, modern thinker.
how do you cipher between the two in this situation?
You see, usually I feel like I'm pro player, especially
Oh,
when I'm
that's what I'm
behind the
saying.
mic. Yeah,
Yeah,
but I don't know. I feel like Harden's handling this pretty poorly. I just didn't understand the point of that clip. Like, first of all, why? Like, what was said in that crowd that prompted that response? The best part of the video is the people just like clapping awkwardly. They're like, "Oh yeah." You're like, I have no idea how to respond to this, but it was kind of just like a weird, bizarre move. So it leads me to believe there's a bunch of behind the shake or behind the scene like handshake deals that went on that
yeah,
he was like led to believe, okay, if I do this, then this is gonna happen. But um, usually I hate when people are like, I mean, I'm just basing this off of the damn thing, like, oh, the Blazers don't owe Dame anything. I actually do think in this scenario, Daryl Morey and the Sixers don't really owe Harden much because it sounds like a pretty simple fix, but like you just don't opt in if you don't want to play for them.
yeah. I mean, I don't know. I just don't know what was said behind the scenes because I do know, like being in this seat now, like there's a lot of things that are said behind the scenes that don't
Don't
come
make it
true,
out.
right?
Uh-huh.
Like I know the end of the year meetings for a lot of players, they feel great coming out of those end of the year meetings, and then once July 1st hit, like the tone's totally different in the way these teams are talking. So there was probably some inklings that Harden knew that he wasn't going to get more money than that if he were to opt out. And I think the best thing for him was opting in and then also giving Daryl Morey a player to trade and make the Sixers better as well, rather than just losing that asset. So I don't know. I think I hope that the situation is going to be able to be resolved. I think Harden still fits the team. I think the Sixers still have a team that can contend. Um, I don't know like where it goes from this because there's still no trade suitors, right? And Daryl Morey is not going to make a decision that's going to make them less competitive.
Yeah, that'll be the awkward
So
thing to see because like for so long, he waited longer than anyone else would have for the Simmons thing. And say what you want about like Harden right now, they're getting him in return for Ben Simmons at this point is like an absolute fleecing, as the kids
oh
say.
yeah,
But it'll be weird because like that was the other thing that was very confusing because Morey has been more loyal to Harden than any GM has been to any player, maybe in the history of the NBA. Like he's basically based his career off of James Harden. And it's been like a mutually beneficial relationship because Harden was so good in Houston for all those years. But I don't think people would have like a lot of GMs, as you're seeing right now, there's not much of a market for him. I feel like Morey is probably still trying to do good by Harden. So I don't know. The entire situation was very confusing.
Yeah, for sure, man.
But
The NBA.
yeah, it's the best reality TV show on television. Just like I don't know, just story after story every week. I know you got to run here quick, but last thing I had here on the agenda is you're talking about before the different forms of media, different forms of content. There's a lot of talk about the rise of the NBA players pods. Like you said, Steph said he was the best point guard of all time on Gilbert Arenas' pod. There's a lot of rankings recently of the best player pods. We're working our way up. I think we were number 6 on Complex's list, but they only did 5.
We're
I
working.
don't know. I was just curious. What's your favorite player pod right now?
I mean,
You seem to be way more locked in on them than I am, truthfully.
Yeah, I mean, he's not a current player, but I was a big JJ Redick podcast guy. I think Paddy and I started bonding over the JJ Redick podcast.
Yeah, I was going to say that might have been the first conversation we may have ever had.
Yeah,
I think you were listening to the pod in your giant Ford Explorer, and I was like,
"Yep,
Redick pod,
yeah." But honestly, I love Paul George's podcast. I think he's done a great job with it. I think you get to like see it just a different side of these players when they have their own platform and they have their own like way to speak out on things, and you really get their true opinions, which is nice. Because you look at Paul George like, oh, like, he doesn't really care that much about this certain topic, and then he comes out and talks about it, and you're like, wow, like this guy actually puts a lot of thought into everything that he does.
Yeah.
I think Jeff Teague has a hilarious podcast. I think like he has such a good balance of like telling the truth while also like making it funny at the same time, which is great. And I like the Trae Young podcast too. I think he's done a good job with it, and I think his last episode with Lonzo was definitely his best one. So we know
it's very good. I listened to that.
We know his podcast you get better as time goes on. So I don't really like to judge people until probably about like 6 months to a year in.
Right. Yeah. Episode 43 is when we start judging them. But PG's pod I've been pleasantly surprised with that. I think that's way better than I kind of expected. The other thing is like the Clay interview is great because he was actually someone who was just sitting down acting like how he normally would off camera. My answer is number 1 easily, Jeff Teague, but I don't know. That's not even like a player pod. It's just like him just sitting down, telling hilarious stories and being real self-deprecating.
It's so funny. Like I watched an interview with him and Gary Harris. And he was like, "Would you rather win a championship or get a max contract?" And like you could just tell, like when he asked that question, he's like, "Oh, I want a max contract. I want a max contract."
Yeah, easily. I want a max contract. The way he delivers stuff is so funny. The last thing I'll say on the topic though is the more player pods that happen, the more people are going to be like speaking out actually truthfully and acting like themselves. Like I think in the last year you've seen more clips and more like personality from everyone that's on these player pods just because like it's so normalized now that it's becoming a thing. So although there are competitors, I'd say any player thinking about starting a pod, it's kind of like rising tide something all ships, whatever that saying is. Yeah, just pretend I said that right.
Yep.
That's kind of the situation. So from us to you, start a pod if you want to. It won't be as good as ours, but we invite you to start because it'll help the market.
Definitely. Yeah, no, I think it's just a great platform, a great thing. I mean, like I said all the time, like NBA players, you work out for 4 to 6 hours a day. Your other 10 hours, like you don't have a lot of things to do. So I think it's a good place to go and talk about basketball, talk with your friends, and talk with your counterparts throughout the NBA, and just hear about their experiences.
And that is why we are excited to continue growing the pod. We'll have some guests on soon. I mean, it's a tough time of year for, like we're saying, with Sports Center. With sports, it's a tough time of year. So we got some in the back pocket coming down the pike. But I think we're ready to sign off. Swider, you got anything else for our audience?
Well, I think you're good. I appreciate you guys listening to us once again this week. Another great episode of the Swider Show. And I'll kick it over to Paddy now for the ending of the episode, which always does a great job on. So thank you guys for listening, and we'll get back to you guys next week.